Hi everybody. It's me and Smokey. We are actually down here. It's not the greatest setup, but I wanted to come on live today and talk a little bit about an experience I had. I went on live yesterday and for some reason I deleted the video on accident. And that's okay because I wasn't too fond of the content I made, and I feel like I wanted to do this all over. So, for those of you who have never been on my channel, this is typically not my setup. I am in the basement of my home, which I'm going to be setting up into a studio. Looks kind of crazy. My name is Detroit Alley Cat. I like to rescue animals, which you'll see one of them in the background. I like to visit all things haunted. I am a circus performer. I own a circus company, and I do like to do true crime. So the video I did coming back onto YouTube was like basically why I haven't been around and all the things that are going to happen in my future. And I feel like it could have been done a lot better. So what I thought was coming back onto YouTube, I could kind of tell a story about Michigan. It happens to actually be one of the places I live. You're gonna have to hold on 1 second because my dog is getting into some trouble. Smokey! 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 Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come up here. Come up. He doesn't want to come up here. Maybe he'll come up here. What is that smell, Smokey? I guess I'll investigate that later. So let's talk about something that happened. I haven't been on YouTube in a really long time. So I have probably 0 people watching me, which is completely fine, but I think this is kind of an interesting story. I'm hoping that somebody will come back and actually check it out. I want to do it in a 2-part series. I want to do the one where I actually talk about the area and the facts as a straight up YouTube video where I actually edit it and make it like a real kind of a YouTube. This is more of a live stream because I want to talk about what happened. So last year we had to go to this festival, and I don't really do a lot of festivals for Blue Crow Talent. By the way, you can check us out on Instagram. You can look up Blue, BLUE, Crow, CROW Talent. It's actually the most beautiful butterfly in the whole world. The most beautiful, deadliest butterfly in the whole world. That's what I named my company after. And you can find us on Instagram and see what we do. So we were booked to work at this festival. It was called Big Cloud. And the reason why it's called Big Cloud is it's like a THC marijuana like a marijuana event. It's kind of changed. In the beginning, it was mostly for caregivers, and it was about the therapy of THC, and then it kind of went from that to like an EDM party. I don't know. I don't run the event. All I know is we were booked to do the talent. We did like dancing and LED performances and aerialist performances, and it was a very cool event. Very nice people that ran the event. But because it is so far away from my house, they have to always book us lodgings. And I personally like to stay at hotels, but the event coordinator decided that they were going to go ahead and book us an Airbnb, which I always find as an adventure. You know, there's a lot of stories about Airbnbs, and recently I've heard about how they have like video cameras, and I don't know, you just never know what you're going to get into when you stay at an Airbnb. It's not like a hotel. Like, things do happen at hotels, and hotels can have feelings, but houses have so much more. But I saw a picture of like the Airbnb, and I thought there's no way that there could be anything wrong with this place. So I know that, like, some of you might believe in ghosts, some of you might not believe in ghosts. This story is definitely for people who do believe in ghosts, or maybe you don't. It's actually the history of the area that is what made it so completely interesting. So the event was very close to this area. It was called St. Joseph, Michigan, and it was also by another place by called Benton Harbor. And the house that they booked, I think it was in Benton Harbor or in St. Joseph. I don't know. They were very, very close to each other. And it was right by the water. So the cool thing about Michigan is that it's in a shape of a mitten. So there's my mitten. And so here's Detroit, right? Detroit's right there. St. Joseph and Benton Harbor is like right here. I would have to say that is on the west side of the state. It's not like it's a little southern. It's very close to Indiana. It's right about there. And so we get to go to this festival and we pull up to this house, and I have to tell you the house looked very much like a manufactured home, almost like a trailer, but more of a manufactured home. But the second that we pulled up into it, it was just this weird feeling. And at first, I was really excited because, I mean, I don't know. I just thought, like, there's something up with this house for sure. So, like, as soon as we pulled up, I jumped out of the house and I was just like, yeah, this house is haunted. And I thought it was going to be fun because, sometimes stuff like that is fun. And so I ran in there, and the second we walked in the house, I just had this really weird feeling that the upstairs had been recently built, but it had been on something that was very old. And so I immediately saw a door and I was like, it's down there. And so, like, I ran downstairs into this basement. And this is kind of like an interesting part of Michigan history, is that in Michigan we have something called Michigan basements. And what's really cool about it is sometimes in a Michigan basement there'll be like a gigantic tree, and that will be in the middle of the basement, and like they will build the house completely around the tree. Now these are houses that are like 200 years old. And also, something that's really interesting is that not just in Michigan, but in a lot of the states, because back in the day when they built these houses, there weren't a lot of funeral homes. Many of the houses that were built like 200 years ago, the basement is where they had the funerals for their family. So, like, many houses had funeral parlors in their basement. And so when I ran downstairs into the basement of the house, on the floor there were these stains of where things had been that had been moved, and I could tell that something had been downstairs. I couldn't tell what it was, but it was eerily shaped like the bottom of a coffin. I don't know if that was it. It could have been a million things, maybe even a clock or like a bookshelf, but it definitely looked like there had been something shaped like that. Maybe I just thought that because of how it was. But while I was in the basement and I was all like excited because I felt like the house was haunted, the lights started like twitching on and off. And so the person that I was with, like, they screamed my name and they were like, Allie, come upstairs right now. And I was like, okay. So I went upstairs, and at this point a bunch of my other performers had arrived, and one of the other performers is very attuned to like the spirit world. Me and her get along very well because we definitely can feel vibes. And, I know a lot of people don't believe in ghosts, but many people believe in empaths. And I would have to say that me and this girl are pretty strong empaths. So she immediately looked at me and she said, I feel something. And I said, oh, yeah, it's here. It's definitely here. and she didn't look happy, but I was like trying to like cheer her up, like, yay, we're staying in a haunted house. And I looked at her and I was just like, it's in the basement. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, whatever it is, it's in the basement. Everybody else kind of did their thing, but like, my friend, she was freaked out, and so we only had enough time before we had to get back to the festival. The festival grounds were about 10 to 15 minutes away from the house. I have to tell you, this area is so beautiful. It was like right by the water, and I don't know if anybody's watching this that doesn't stay by Michigan, but like the water on the west side of the state is known for its beauty, and I don't know, it's just very, it's got a feel about it. Like we have the dunes on the west side of the state, the upper west side of the state, and the water's just really beautiful. It's very cold, but it's beautiful. So we went back that night to perform at the festival, and everything was fine. And then we got back, and I mean, I could immediately tell when we got back to the house that like the house was like awake. And it was just so strange because it, like I said, it was a manufactured home. It definitely, it could have been a trailer. And so like, you envision like a haunted house, and you think to yourself that like it's going to be like this old Addams family looking house, but that's not what it was. And so we got in, and I could just feel the house like kind of wake up when we came in, and everybody else was kind of like feeling that way. So everyone gathered on my bed, and we just started talking. And then one of my other performers, who has a very interesting background, decided to tell us about it, and it happened to be about her mother. I can't tell the story because it's not mine to tell, but right around a certain time at like 3 o'clock in the morning, a bunch of coyotes started howling, and she swore that it meant that her mother was there, but I had this odd feeling that like it was a warning. That's what I felt like. However, I don't want to take anybody's moment away from them. So it was very interesting. We stayed up very late. Eventually, we went to bed. None of us could have the lights off, so we all slept with the lights on. And at the same time, something was going on with me and another person. It would happen to be one of the last weekends I would spend with them. So tensions were really high, I guess. And it's almost like the house picked up on it. And so we went back to Saturday night at the festival, which is usually a very, very busy night for festivals. And we performed, and everyone was super tired. The one performer that had told us about her mother, she decided that she wasn't going to come back to the house because her boyfriend had come up there, which was fine. And so it was three of us. It was one person that tensions were high between me and her, and it was my other friend who I said was an empath. And we walked into the house, and before we even like talk about walking into the house, on the way back to the house, there were like these really tall trees in the area, and it was very strange because I kept feeling like I saw things in the trees, and one of the people that I was with also felt like they could feel it. It was like a forest around the house. So we got back to the house, and then we opened up the door. I promise you, I have never in my life felt anything like this before. It was literally like the air was thick, and you could just hear like a pin drop. Like, I don't know how to explain it to you. And I just felt like it was going to be a long night. And I started walking around, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't know if I can do this. And the girl that I was with was like, just, you have to like pretend like it's not here. And I don't know. I didn't know if that was the right answer. So I turned on some music. I started listening to Wardruna, which is a band I really like, and I just started relaxing. And about I think it was about 12:30, 1 o'clock. I was like, okay, it's time for us to try to get to bed so we could go ahead and leave here in the morning. So I laid down in the bed. Um, and one of my performers was in one room and one was in the other room. So there were 3 rooms and we were all staying in different rooms. And that is when it all started. I don't know how to explain it, but like every time I would close my eyes, I would feel like a yank or I would feel something moving around the room. Mind you, I had to keep the light on because I couldn't turn the light off. So I spent a good like half hour in my room by myself. And then eventually I got up and I went into my friend's room, which is that girl that I said was the empath. And I looked at her and I said, "Do you want to sleep with me?" And she looked at me and she was like, "Yeah." And so she got in the bed with me. And that night was so bad. It was so bad. Me and my friend slept shoulder to shoulder. Every time we would shut our eyes, you'd hear noises, you hear yanks, you could feel like movement all around the room. At one point, it sounded like something was in the hallway crawling towards us. It was terrifying. It was like seriously terrifying. Oh, I just saw someone comment. Hi, Ava. Aviva, is that you? um, but so what was crazy about the hallway is that you could feel this thing crawling towards the bedroom, and like I personally heard like the fingernails on the wall, and it was like scratching. And so then the person that I was having tensions with that weekend, they actually called my phone. I don't know why they didn't just get up and come to my room, but the phone rang. And so me and the other girl who were in the bed, we heard my phone ring, and I was like, "Oh, that's some of my performers at the event. They're just letting us know that they're okay." But it was actually the girl that was in the other room. And I had found out later in that morning that she had sent me a message, and she said, "Are we being poltergeist?" Because she could hear. The house was in Benton Harbor, St. Joseph's. And so I do know the history, and I'm about to tell you it right now. And so the girl in the other room had asked, like, "Are we being poltergeist?" And I never did respond because I didn't pick up the phone. Me and that girl slept in the bed the entire time. We didn't sleep at all, but we laid in the bed the entire time holding each other. And eventually at one point I had to get up out of the bed, and I was like, "Hey," like I was talking to the house. I was like, "Hey, I know that you're feeling us or you're sucking our energy. I don't even know what's happened here, but like can you please just give us a couple hours of sleep and we will leave?" And it was at that point that I realized it wasn't just one thing, it was multiple things. And I laid down in the bed and I looked up at the ceiling, and that's when I saw the paint. So in the ceiling, you could see that there was like black mold in the corner, and that somebody had tried to like paint over the mold. And I don't know why, but I just knew that somebody had died in that room, and that mold was from, you know, the death, and that, they had tried to cover it up with like kills or whatever paint they are. And so I didn't want to tell the person that I was with that I saw that. So I just like kept that to myself. We never got any sleep. Eventually in the morning, we like packed it all up. We left. That was probably the most haunted house I've ever been in my entire life. Like, if I could have turned on the YouTube and made it live, like I promise you, it would have been like proof of the afterlife. It was so bad. You could just hear things all night long, moving, crawling, the air, everything. It was so much. It was so much. And so I started to do some research. And this is where it gets really interesting. I don't want to go too in depth with it because I really feel like the facts of this area should be explained. Um, so we were right in an area called Benton Harbor. There was no upstairs. There was only one floor and a basement. But whatever entity was in the house was actually in the basement, and it had crawled up from the basement and was coming towards us. So there was no upstairs. Um, but going back to the area, so it's the area is called Benton Harbor, St. Joseph's, and I just wanted to do some like research about the house and the neighborhood. And the first thing that I found out was that the house had sold 7 times in 2 years, and that on the Airbnb website there were no reviews, which is really bizarre. And for a house to like sell in 7 years is super bizarre as well. I know like people like to flip houses, or houses like to can be given to people when somebody die, but to be sold 7 times in 2 years, that was just I can't even explain how that. I mean, maybe there are some kind of legal reasons. But now let's talk about this area, okay? So I started doing research into the area, and that is when I found out that the area that we were in had one of the longest cults in Michigan. The cult itself was called the House of David. You can actually Google it, and it's kind of crazy because when I think of the House of David, there was also a cult in Texas, called the Branch Davidians, that was ran by a leader called David Koresh, um, and I don't know, it just was weird, but it was called the House of David, and it was actually there for 200 years, and they are still there in Michigan. Still remnants of this cult are still there, and they actually were very famous because they had a baseball team, and you guys should look up the baseball team. Like when I do the other video about this, I'm going to definitely like show you guys. So they did not believe in shaving or cutting their hair, so they look like a group of Jesus people. Like when I say Jesus people, like they actually look like Jesus playing baseball. They were really good baseball players and they got to be very famous. But there were some very strange things that happened in the cult, of course. Um, Gosh, I don't know what you're supposed to say and what you can't say on YouTube. So I guess I'm gonna try to play around with rooms, but or words, but um, of course, the leader had a liking for younger younger children in a way that is unnatural. I mean, I feel like a lot of cults have that happen. And so that person got in trouble for that. I believe there was an assault on a child. And so I think that gave the cult a bad rap. And there's a lot about this cult that happened in that area, and it's just crazy that it was there. But I also, on top of that, got to find out that the city that I was living in or staying in was a sundown city. So I didn't even know that they had this in Michigan. I've heard of it happening in the South, but not in Michigan. So, for those of you that don't know what a sundown city is, it's a city that if you are a certain culture, by the time that it turns dark and you are still in that part of the city, that they have the right to like shoot you. So I know I'm laughing, but that's absolutely horrible. And I got to find out that the city that we were in was known for like it had all these racial wars and like it segregation, and what was really weird is when we were driving back to the house at the night, I swear to you, I saw shadows of people hanging from the trees. And like I told the people in the car with me before I found out that that had actually been a history of the area. Yeah, it's crazy. The House of David, I had never heard of it until I actually went to that area. And so I found out that there was like some really dark history with segregation and um, stuff like that, and just a lot of that kind of stuff. And yeah, so we left that neighborhood, and I really never talked about it again because, yeah, how is that legal? So it happened at a time that segregation and discrimination was legal. So I think that the sundown cities were pretty much known in the 1920s to the 1950s. I have to actually do some research about this, and that's why I want this to be like a two-part series. So I wanted to tell you the experience I had about the house, and then I want to talk to you about like the actual history of the area and all the things that involve that area, because it's a lot. It's a lot. Like I I don't want to like speculate. I don't want to tell things that I am just guessing about. Like I want to like tell you guys facts, because the whole story about where I stayed, like I just, how could you even make that up? Like I had no idea that we were going to an area that had a cult, that had such violent history. And I honestly, I just started thinking about it a couple days ago, and unfortunately, that one of the people that went with us, that was my last weekend to spend with them, and it was someone I was very attached to. So when that person stopped talking to me, I forgot about the experience that happened at the house, and I just focused on the trauma of losing someone that I viewed as a daughter. And I am kind of coming out of that depression and coming out of that and getting over it. But I just realized, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't, I never told the story of the house, and I never told the story of the neighborhood. And I've actually thought about going back. Um, and I don't know. I did talk to one of the girls that went with us, and she was like, no way, I'm not going back to the house. But I kind of want to, because I mean, like, how crazy would that be to show you the world? Because it was so active. It was so active. Like you don't have to be a medium or a spiritual person to know that it was actually happening. It was that intense. And I would really love to like go back there and videotape some of the stuff that happened. And yeah, so that's the story of Benton Harbor, St. Joseph's, and the crazy haunted house. Um, I I'm gonna do a second part series about that neighborhood. So my daughter just let in my second dog that I rescued. Do you guys want to meet her? Come here, dear. Okay, so I maybe I'll show you my animals. No, no, come on. Come here. Chelsea. I am so sorry. Okay, well, I'm going to let you guys go so I can stop the dog fight that's happening. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed my live stream. Sorry about being in my basement. As always, stay safe and stay spooky. I hope to be back on here this week. And yeah, it's really great to see you guys. I hope you enjoyed the story. Bye, guys.